Now, bringing you the grassroots connectivity essence on which we are going to showcase the Higher Act 2025, the five core epicenter emphasis that tries to identify Higher Act 2025 as a critical timely intervention. The very first emphasis, and that will be our continuous approach on SGMI, Strategic Global Market Intelligence, and that happens to be the inside out philosophy. From the very first forum topic, we emphasize most organization nations at macro, organization professionals at micro level, uh, if they are emphasizing more on outside in, what is happening in external environment, and based on that they are trying to adapt, they can try to grow and remain competitive to a certain level. But if the nation or the business entity or professionals, they would like to see the strategic advantage, that's long-term competitive advantage, they need to focus, determine, affirmative, and continuous improvement on inside out philosophy. And that inside out philosophy, trying to identify through the internal environmental scanning SWOT, strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. Uh, Strength and opportunity taken as assets, whereas weakness and threat considered as liability. So you maximize the strength and at the same time reduce the liability that happens to be weakness and threat, and at the same time bridging the gap. And when you continuously invest time, effort, resources, reinvest also, you will be trying to see remarkable outcomes, and that gives the core strategic advantage, and you can try to showcase the country uh, and at macro level the company or the professionals from the competitive crowd totally unique, differentiated, and value oriented. So on Higher Act 2025, when we are showcasing inside out philosophy, what we are trying to indicate, all the jobs that are being offshored happens to be mostly to developing countries where the labor pool not very skilled. So companies are ready to invest or trying to give that contract on offshoring to companies that develops the skill set but at a very competitive price because of the lower currency and the abundance of the labor pool. And that inside out philosophy means the jobs that are strategic, critical for the company's overall growth, not only the current but also futuristic, needs to remain on platform. And when it is trying to put upfront in competition, whether it's happening local, national, or at global level, that inside out philosophy to continuously invest and reinvest, and the strength opportunities maximized, and whereas weakness threat neutralized, and bridging the gap can make the platform much more stronger. So the Higher Act 2025 happens to be a concept where US needs to emphasize more inside out if it needs to remain as the global trade powerhouse. The second essence that we will be showcasing, the impact of internal profit. So the catch here is two ways for an organization to make profit. Mostly, the emphasis happens to be on external profit. So that external profit means in competition, the company try to increase sales, profitability, market cap. Now, for that to happen in any competition, the organization's offering, whether it is product or service, needs to be unique, differentiated, and value oriented. So in short, innovation and R&D needs to be high. Now, the catch here is innovation, because companies are not ready to take the risk on invention, because invention happens to be time consuming, uh, and that invention, again, there is no end date that it will be proved successful. And even if it is proved successful, to make it commercially successful happens to be highly risky, because customers don't want to be the guinea pigs. And the the type of communication budget, marketing communication budget, the awareness of product and services, especially on invention, can be very, very risky. And before customer trying to show some interest, competitors had already massed the platform. So on global trade competition, the catch happens to be innovation. So when we are trying to talk about innovation 20 to 40% improvement on existing platform. So the catch here is what one company can achieve, the competitors can also achieve equally. So the one that takes the lead, implements from idea inception to idea commercialization, they are the one that is going to bring the solution unique, differentiated, value oriented, and going to increase market cap, market share, all that. But the catch here, the 20 to 40%. So once a company takes the lead, the competitors can also try to do what is called re-engineering, trying to see what the company had brought on innovation. And that re-engineering, they can try to see the whole process, because most of them will be showcased under patent protection. So they get that concept, but they cannot try to do a copy and paste, but they need to do a slightly different version. And then what happens in a short time period, the innovation that the company invested, in some case scenario billions, the competitor happens to be coming almost at parallel. And the strength that they thought that they will be getting over the time period, it gets reduced, because it is innovation and it is improvement on existing platform. So for an organization to increase sales, thereby profitability, market cap, especially in external competitive environment, very much limited, because after a certain time, the competitor will come almost equal. So you can try to see Apple every 6 months trying to go on innovation, and it is not trying to put Apple solely on the topmost position. Very soon you try to see competitors like Samsung, even Huawei. They are not almost matching, sometimes trying to do better. So to increase profit on external sales, very limited. And that is where the concept of internal profit. And here we would like to showcase the real owners, because most powerful companies listed on public stock exchange. So the real owners of the company happens to be shareholder, and the common shareholder has no interest or no saying in day-to-day operation. So they had invested just to multiply their investment, what we call shareholder wealth maximization. And they would like to see not only the stock value improvement in dividend, and they're saving much more better than investing in financial institution. So shareholder would like to see their investment maximizing, and the management, the number one responsibility, more than increasing the profit, market cap, everything. The management works day in, day out, shareholder wealth maximization. How the way they can maximize the real owner, common shareholders' wealth. And to do that, external profit through external sales, very limited. But once you had achieved the platform on innovation, R&D, and you had attracted not only the market, the customers, loyalty, and then you're trying to say the competitors are almost coming parallel to you, then the most effective way to maintain profit is internally. And that internal profit means financial restructuring. And what the company will try to do is how the way to internally operate at the lowest cost. And that is where the concept, some of those functions need to be taken out from the organization. And basically, the concept happens to be outsourcing. The company can try to do it locally. Like, for example, American company trying to give certain functions to a local American company. They can significantly save money. But again, the catch happens to be the contract still remains in US dollar. And that effectiveness, not very much there. And that's where the management will be making the decision to take those functions and try to project in those countries where they get effective labor pool, but the most critical catch, at the lowest cost possible. And for that lowest cost possible, the strength happens to be the country that they will be identifying, not only its economy, but its currency needs to be weak. The more the economy and the currency remains weak, the more the leverage they get to maximize their internal profit. And that currency exchange rate and the weakness of economy and effective labor pool will make it sure the innovation R&D that the company had achieved after a certain time, they can maximize by reducing the internal operating cost and increasing the internal profit. So that's the reason most jobs position on offshoring to those destinations where the economy, the currency remains weak. And when we say weak, the scenario here is continuously the currency fluctuating against US dollar and the more leverage that they try to draw. And the shareholders much more happy because that internal profit is the only way that the company becomes more profitable. The market share, the cash flow, and everything that they are trying to do. On financial analysis concept, we call return on revenue. On every dollar they are investing, they can make it sure what the profit that they are trying to draw. And the impact of the internal profit, where shareholders much more focused and management would like to implement, tries to give momentum to offshoring. And the Hire Act 2025 basically corrects this platform. The third essence drawn on the very basic natural logic. Any innovation R&D or any competitive advantage drawn in any country based on the know-how prevailing in its environment. So in short, the talent, the skill set, the proficiency that is very much there to not only to improve, to maintain, to sustain, and even strengthen. So if an organization had achieved any competitive strength through innovation R&D, in competition, they are getting the fair, straight advantage. But like the way we had indicated, innovation having that time sensitivity and competitor will be very soon matching. So when the company tries to indicate, hey, the reason why we are offshoring, some of the core skill set missing in the country. And in most case scenario, they try to emphasize on the concept STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But the catch here is efficiency. That is what they are trying to do to maintain that internal profit at the lower cost. There is no way that the know-how, especially the skill set that is missing on STEM, is missing in the economy, because the platform very much advanced in that country, but the company ready to offshore through a contract to an entity, of course, will be in a destination where the economy, the currency remains weak. But when they try to transfer those type of job, they would like to do at the lowest cost possible without diluting the qualitative outcome. So the catch here is like it is not the skill set that is missing. It is the efficiency that they would like to draw internally to keep the profit up. So the question here, the logic, there is no logic that the skill set is missing in the country, and that's why they have to track in those countries where the skill set happens to be. In reality, what is happening, the company ready to not only give the contract to a company that can try to do at the highest effectiveness and most critical efficiency, but they are also ready to invest on training, learning, and development, because what skill set required to maintain that innovation R&D is very much missing in that country. So in that process, in the training, learning, development budget, they are ready to invest on that local workforce and ready to bring down to the platform where they can try to maintain. Whereas the same training, learning and development budget, if it is showcased in its primary country, definitely the improvement, re-improvement, and of course the investment, that continuous investment can make the platform super successful. But the catch happens to be, it happens to be in strong currency like US dollar. But when you are trying to showcase, for example, countries like India, $1 comes down to 89 Indian rupees. So you can make profit 10 times by cutting that internal cost. The jobs that needs to remain in US slips to developing countries. Primarily right now, the destination for that skill set, especially manufacturing, China. But when we are trying to address service industry, linguistic requirement, anywhere from India to Philippines. So the natural logic that the skill set missing is a very big question mark, because any innovation R&D or any competitive advantage drawn, we will be strongly believe the know-how is very much prevailing and the talent very much there. But if you involve that talent, you have to pay the real price, and that real price means you have to give the real salary benefits, and that can one way or other way dilute internal profit. Also, the fourth essence that we would like to showcase, the difference between support functions and core functions. So an organization, before getting onto the platform, especially management making the decision about outsourcing functions related to certain departments, they will be trying to take the whole functions together and try to classify them under two categories. The very first one happens to be core function, or otherwise also called strategic functions, and the rest support functions. So strategic or core functions are those functions that gives the organization the core advantage. In short, the organization known in competition. For example, can be innovation R&D, or anything like time efficiency or technology precision. So in competition, the organization known for that strategic function, and any investment, any improvement through innovation R&D, direct result in competition with increased sales, profitability, market share, market cap, and the series goes on. So that strategic core function is what that makes that organization and defines it in competition. Whereas support functions are those functions that the company not specialize. They are not experts in that area. So they require those functions to basically support, sustain its overall day-to-day functioning. For example, a company that happens to be strong in technology, or let's try to say on garment industry, fashion apparel, that strategic core functions will be more on like the way the technological precision or the or the creative fashion patterns that they try to bring. But when you are trying to see like on the support functions, like for example logistic may not be a function that the company specializes in. So in short, they don't have that know-how. So, but they have the department, and they need to make it sure whether it is procuring raw materials or trying to bring the finished goods to the market, they require logistic. But if the company going to invest on those support functions like logistic in the competition, the competitor or the customer not going to identify or trying to say they have a uniqueness based on which they are going to make the purchasing decision. In competition, the customer will be only focusing on strategic function that defines the company in competition, whereas support functions, no matter whatever the company tries to reinvest, it's not going to give any direct competitive advantage. So when the management makes the decision, they try to protect secure strategic function, and the support functions they basically try to outsource. So that outsourcing of support functions can also be done. Like an American company can try to outsource to a local American company that tries to employ Americans, but they will not be very much interested. And the reason for that, we got some saving, but it is not enough. We are still paying in US dollar. But on the other hand, if the support functions being outsourced to offshore platform where the economy, the currency remains weak, and at the same time a kind of a qualitative labor pool, like for example like China and India, you can significantly reduce the cost. And the support function happens to be basically the platform that needs to be taken on outsourcing or even on offshoring platform, because innovation R&D, because it is not the core area of an organization, they would like to do at the lowest cost, still makes sense. But the trouble what is happening, because the greed to improve the internal profit becoming bigger, wider, and that's where even strategic functions are being outsourced, and that outsource not only just limiting to local platform, but basically offshored to those places where they get all that advantage, where efficiency can draw much more wider profit. So the impact of strategic jobs offshoring happens to be critical, which is very much corrected by the revamp, retitle, Hire Act 2025. But the last critical essence on the topic we will be trying to bring on boiling down on currency exchange. Because at the end, when companies, especially management, making the decision that they would like to outsource to offshore platform, they are looking for destination where not only the economy, the currency remains weak, qualitative labor pool, like the way we had emphasized, where they can get the maximum financial leverage, and that maximum financial leverage coming based on the currency exchange rate to US dollar. A company can get very talented, very effective workforce, like for example in European Union, other than US, or even in countries like Canada, Australia, and even in Singapore. But the catch happens to be the currency still strong, still not only strong, it is stable, and it is not losing the value against US dollar. So that internal profit not very much happening. And that is where countries in Asia, where the economy always under check, comes into full play. And especially when we are trying to look towards work skill set based on the offshoring being done, again the catch here happens to be, it is not like India, for example, happens to be the ultimate platform where we can get STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. If you try to see very closely, the platform even more well defined, and especially analytical science and all, the countries that happens to be strong, no second thought, happens to be uh, other offshoring countries like China, uh, Taiwan. You can try to get South Korea, even Singapore. But the currency exchange, where you can try to say $1 is equal to almost 7 Chinese yuan, and even Singapore dollar happens to be even stronger. So that leverage, financial leverage on currency, not very much happening. So the reason, like for example, India is being showcased, especially for service industry, as the topmost destination. It's not like India has got everything, but India gives the maximum financial leverage because of its currency that keeps on depreciating its value. So if India taken compared to other countries like Malaysia and all that has an equal linguistic on English capability and all, the catch still happens to be $1 is equal to 4 Malaysian ringgit. But when you are trying to look towards India, the advantage, $1 almost equal to 89 Indian rupees. And the strength is not only on the current exchange rate, but also the reality. The currency, especially from countries like India, not going to appreciate. It is only going to depreciate. So right now at 89, but you can try to see the current scenario where India upfront from US 50% tariff, and the President Trump administration through not only European Union but NATO members pressurizing to put 100% tariff on China and India. So if India on the upfront from US getting 50% tariff and from NATO members getting another 100%, if it comes into full implementation, the currency that is standing at 89 will be slipping to 100 very soon. And in that case scenario, for multinational companies, they get the maximum leverage uh, to maintain, sustain functions, not only support function, but strategic functions at the most efficient level. Because especially strategic function, if you're trying to attract American workforce, we need to pay, compensate according to the talent that's brought on the platform, and they also know the rights, obligation, and that becomes a challenge for companies to continuously drive on their internal profit. So the global currency exchange rate is the one that drives the offshoring concept. And more the currency going to fall, more the jobs going to go to those destinations. And the scenario happens to be, it tries to challenge those strategic functions that needs to remain on the national platform, that needs to be invested with local workforce, and that continuous improvement through investment, reinvestment, that need to remain intact. On the topic Hire Act, Halting International Relocation of Employment Act 2025, the most productive global work model for developed nation, we would like to showcase 5 strategic insight. The very first one, the difference between Hire Act 2025 versus Hire Act 2010. The difference in purpose, mechanism, deduction, and the essence that we are trying to bring. Hire Act 2025 more productive and effective to not only sustain strategic jobs, but also to give the strength that US economy requires to sustain as the world's topmost trade powerhouse. The second strategic insight, the Hire Act 2025 tries to secure strategic jobs critical for a nation's vibrant future economic growth. And the strategic job that happens to be high on innovation R&D that can try to draw maximum competitive advantage, the Hire Act 2025 tries to protect. The third strategic insight, timely correction. Developing countries that are getting leverage on developed countries platform with minimal capital requirements and currency exchange, Hire Act 2025 constructively address. The fourth insight, the Hire Act 2025 ensures balancing trade, improving purchasing parity, and sustaining economic hope and prosperity that gives the country the momentum to remain on the top as the sole global trade powerhouse. And the final strategic insight, the Hire Act 2025, drawn on economic innovation, engagement, enrichment, and empowerment that enhances the strength internally, not only among the talented workforce, but the strengthening of internal economy that showcase the competitiveness can be maintained to a larger extent. The first strategic insight, Hire Act 2010 versus the proposed Hire Act 2025, on purpose, mechanism, and the viable outcome. The Hire Act 2010, standing for hiring incentives to relocate employment, versus the proposed Hire Act 2025, that stands for halting international relocation of employment. So when we are trying to look towards the implemented legislation act, Hire Act 2010, it happens to be much more rewarding, giving incentives if the job can be secured, maintained on US platform without any mandatory punitive platform where it includes penalty if a certain percentage of jobs being offshored. Uh, it, it it hadn't created a kind of an environment. If you try to keep jobs within US, you will be getting that advantage, uh, that incentive through the payroll, and you can also try to claim it as tax deduction. All that's one way or other way, trying to encourage to keep the job within US. But like the way we had emphasized, for the management, the emphasis happens to be on internal profit. So although they are getting incentives when they are trying to hire Americans on payrolls, tax deduction, but still it happens to be in US dollar. And it is not the kind of saving it is trying to draw, nothing in comparison to the internal profit they can try to draw on offshoring destination. So the difference from Hire Act 2010 to to the proposed Hire Act 2025, that happens to be halting international relocation of employment. Uh, the proposed Hire Act 2025 more punitive, and not only trying to put tariff excise on payrolls and all, but the very first catch, if you can try to see Hire Act 2010 and Hire Act 2025, whereas Hire Act 2010 happens to be more hiring, Hire Act 2025 halting. So the strength of Hire Act 2025 is trying to come out very openly to protect and especially strategic jobs and offshoring, any offshoring, and especially American jobs that are offshored to cost efficient destinations. Uh, its purpose is to make it sure it is financially disadvantaged to do that. And the mechanism 25% excise tariff on all those payroll services that had been outsourced to offshore destination. So the outcome here with not only that 25% excise tariff, but also the expense cannot be claimed as deduction. So it remains uh, uh, the 25%, and the 25% cannot be claimed on tax deduction, can make the platform much more corrective. So we would like to showcase, although the Hire Act 2010 encouraging, motivating, but the drive and that to be continuously on internal profit. So companies, until and unless innovation R&D to the core, then only they are going for American workers. Otherwise, the continuous drive on internal profit will be showcasing all those jobs being offshore, and that the American jobs, especially strategic jobs that needs to remain in US, trying to get into cost efficient destination. So the Hire Act directly with that 25% excise tariff, and at the same time it cannot be claimed as deduction on tax, makes it a kind of a timely corrective intervention that can try to protect uh, the American strategic jobs, that can make sure Americans that should be having the first say towards those jobs filling into to the right capacity, they are getting that fair advantage. The second strategic insight, strategic job protection, are critical for a nation's vibrant future economic growth. Like the way we had showcased strategic jobs that happens to be high on innovation, R&D, know-how, that can give long-term competitive advantage provided organization ready to invest, reinvest, needs to be well protected within the nation's border. And the Hire Act 2025 with the upfront 25% excise tariff and cannot be claimed as tax deduction will make not only the organization and especially its management decision maker to make sure the strategic job remains on the platform, and that advantage that they have drawn with their continuous investment, continuous improvement, steadily keeps on growing. And the more the strategic job, if it is offloaded to offshoring destination, the country's economic strength, viability, everything comes into play. So the Hire Act 2025 constructively address this offshoring gap. The third strategic insight, timely intervention. Hire Act 2025 corrects the developing countries' unfair leverage with minimal capital and lower currency exchange rate. The reason why offshoring becoming so prevalent and dominant, like the way we had addressed, uh, identifying destinations where the economic currency remains weak with a qualitative labor pool, uh, where companies would like to see not only those support function but the critical strategic function also offshored, where it is maintained to a certain level without diluting its qualitative outcome. So the developing country getting that advantage, not only uh, drawing this offshore platform with vibrant employment, and for most developing country, especially its government, uh, the challenge happens to be how the way to give employment that brings quality, standard of living, and especially improving purchasing parity. So when multinational companies tries to offshore, and especially American companies, it brings that fair advantage, uh, and in some cases also an advantage that happens to be in critical question mark zone, uh, where the economy, the buying power, everything improving, and a minimal capital requirement, and the catch happens to be the lower currency rate. And the way we had addressed, for example, India, especially on service industry, becoming so important on offshoring, and the reason happens to be is not just the STEM skill proficiency, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, but it is prevailing in other destinations as well. But the catch, the currency exchange rate keeps on diluting, standing $1 to 89 Indian rupees happens to be the catch, where offshoring can bring serious disadvantage to US economic platform, and especially its strategic jobs that can slip to destination where currency remains lower, and efficiency with which internal profit being drawn can be the catch that needs to be corrected. And Hire Act 2025 uh, constructively tries to address, and with that 25% and cannot be claimed on tax, can make the platform financially discouraging, and especially to keep the strategic job within US platform intact. The fourth strategic insight on Hire Act 2025: balancing trade, improving purchasing parity, and sustaining economic hope and prosperity. By protecting, securing strategic jobs within the US through the Hire Act 2025, which itself stands for halting international relocation of employment, it will make it sure the balance of payment, especially balancing trade, uh, the more strategic job that gives global competitive advantage if it remains on platform. Customer literally in any part of the world, developing, ready to pay uh, on product and services that happens to be high on innovation R&D and cannot be easily substituted by competitor. So if those type of job that gives that continuous momentum remains in US, the export going to become much more stronger, much more effective, balancing trade, and at the same time, with that strategic job that requires continuous investment, reinvestment, and the improvement, that is where the jobs in salaries, benefit, overall compensation keeps on improving. And in short, if those jobs remains intact in US, the buying power, the purchasing parity among Americans steadily going to grow, and not only within US but globally. And at the same time, it will sustain and bring the connectivity towards economic hope and prosperity. And that economic hope and prosperity, that uh, that all its call for hard work, determination, assertiveness, focus, uh, will always pay good. And whether we are trying to talk about education, uh, society, volunteer, platform, or continuously trying to challenge to bring the very best, uh, the Hire Act 2025, especially on American turf, it can bring that grassroots outcomes. The final strategic insight: the proposed Hire Act 2025 ensures economic innovation, engagement, enrichment, and overall empowerment. When strategic jobs remains intact, secured within US platform, the American workers will be having more saying, not only the qualitative productive outcome that they are trying to bring, but it will be also trying to bring the overall improvement through continuous investment on time, effort, resources, and the management trying to raise the platform where they are not only going to improve uh, the working environment, but also they will be giving the significant weightage for that continuous improvement to happen, and that is where they will be involving employees to the common decision making process, and and that empowerment to continuously keep on challenging and trying to find avenue to do better, all that possibility becoming very strong. And the catch here is, as the strategic job remains well protected through the proposed Hire Act 2025, uh, American workers also not only trying to get uh, options where through continuous improvement at their personal front, whether it is education, trying to take volunteer platform for continuous learning, they will be trying to see all that, trying to give them the most productive outcome, where they can try to see improvement and enrichment of work responsibility, and the way they started and the way they are getting towards the retirement end, they will be trying to see the gigantic improvement leap, where they try to see every phase it is not only well accepted, recognized, appreciated, and the constructive growth and development very much coming into full phase. On SGMI, Strategic Global Market Intelligence, improvement suggestions towards proposed Hire Act 2025. We would like to showcase a balancing act on stick and carrots. We would like to suggest three stick punitive and two carrot rewarding suggestions. The first stick punitive one happens to be only maintenance job offshoring. The legislation, when comes into full implementation, need to make companies mandatory to classify the jobs that are being offshored as maintenance, maintenance or strategic. Only maintenance job can be offshored. If strategic jobs being offshored, there needs to be penalty that can come with tariff or even limitation with certain percentage. The second stick suggestion on punitive, special percentage offshoring on total workforce, and it needs to be ensured through HR audit regulatory compliance. So if a company tries to offshore, it should not be dramatic. Its total workforce and a certain percentage only uh, only can be brought towards offshoring platform, and that to be uh, less on innovation R&D and more commonly identified as support functions or maintenance functions. The third stick suggestion, correcting the gaps on downsizing and offshoring, because if the company trying to offshore by downsizing American workers, it needs to be corrected through penalties, excessive tariff, and disqualification towards offshoring for a certain period of time that can range from 2 to 5 years. And on the balancing carrot platform, rewarding. Because if you try to see Hire Act 2025 happens to be more punitive, uh, that is uh, trying to discourage with financial disadvantage to offshore, but it also needs to meaningfully give the incentive for companies to keep the jobs intact, what we call insourcing. And the very first suggestion, economic deeper incentives for American companies that shows strength towards insourcing. So if any company tries to keep 90% job within US, they should get a tax break. Tax break means tax incentive of 5%. And if they are able to keep 100% job, uh, the tax incentive they should be getting anywhere 8 to 10%. And that will make it sure uh, more companies and especially management decision makers trying to get that strong advantage, recognition, and the tax incentives to keep the jobs intact. And the final carrot rewarding suggestion, annual National American Award creation for each specific industry solely on insourcing criteria. And more the company keeps the job intact, secure, retained on American turf, needs to be uh, more accepted, recognized, and appreciated. And the National American Award recognition can go in a very effective way to make the Hire Act 2025 much more imperative. In conclusion, on SGMI, Strategic Global Market Intelligence Forum, on the topic Hire Act 2025, Most Productive Global Work Model for Developed Nations, is a timely intervention to US economy that requires wider support, hope, and bipartisan collaboration to turn it into legislation and implementation, drawing out productive outcomes. The proposed Hire Act 2025 will ensure strategic jobs high on innovation, R&D, market leadership, well protected, sustained, and remaining in the US, enshrinning it as the global superpower house on trade, economy, on global dominance. It also revives basic hope among citizens on hard work, determination, and perseverance that they need not to ill compete and gets base priority on home ground. Also for the concerned anxious youth, it rejuvenates and refocuses on the importance of education, social economic integration, and continuously challenging to do better, and the more they do, the more they are recognized. The proposed Hire Act 2025 can be a true productive work model for every developed nation to implement and follow and strategically strengthen to gain the ultimate global trade strength internally with its own talented people and workforce. The more they place trust, hope, and ready to invest and reinvest, they can make the nation's trade powerful. Also, with AI integration at workplace, developed countries, national leaders, decision makers can resonate the proposed Hire Act 2025 with the requisite localization to keep economic hope and prosperity alive and intact. The in-depth analysis and projection thought-provoking platform SGMI, Strategic Global Market Intelligence, initiated to create proactive awareness and sound preparedness in global trade implementation and practices. We appreciate your qualitative time to visit us to gain global know-how, and we equally count on your inputs, suggestions, feedback towards continuously improving our strategic communication platform. Thanks.